Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to AJ 101 Criminal Law Online. And tonight's lecture is going to be on Chapter 10, Types of Assaults. And it's a pretty good-sized chapter to cover. So, again, this will be one of the chapters where I'm going to go over kind of the larger points, and I'll have you kind of read in your textbooks, which I know is a novel concept, but you'll read kind of the smaller pieces, if you will, to help kind of put all this stuff together as we talk about assault. So to begin our chapter, a good place to start is kind of at the lowest level. So we're going to talk about, what is an assault, and then we'll kind of move on from there. So assault defined can be found in Penal Code Section 240, and an assault is an unlawful attempt coupled with a present ability to commit a violent injury on the person of another. Now, with that being said, there are three elements that are required or necessary to prove an assault, and that would be the unlawful attempt to commit battery. And you're going to see how assault kind of matches up with battery in a minute. And it gets a little confusing, but I think I can separate it out to where you'll get it. Okay, so an unlawful attempt to commit battery coupled with a present ability, and finally to commit a violent injury on the person of another. And the punishment for simple assault is in Section 241A, the Penal Code: fine not exceeding $1,000 or imprisonment in the county jail not exceeding 6 months, or both. And if it's committed against a special class, which we'll go over in a few minutes, we'll talk about special class of individuals, the punishment will double. So kind of continuing a little bit with simple assault here, not all assaults are unlawful. Keep in mind, like self-defense or sporting contests. So not every single assault is unlawful. And assault is an attempt crime, if you will, to commit battery. It's a general intent crime, but this is how the two pieces kind of come together. So assault is an attempted battery, if you will. And once the assault is completed, then it would actually become a battery. So kind of stay with me as we talk about that. The assailant, again, must have what they call present ability to commit the crime, meaning physically capable of being carried out. And violent injury doesn't mean to severely injure, it merely means unlawful application of force. And the definitions are in your textbook, and it kind of broadens them out a little bit. And you can kind of read those if you want. So again, we're going to kind of just touch on a few things here. Now, there are special classes, as I spoke about a few minutes ago, when it comes to assault. So Penal Code 241 defines those special classes against whom an assault carries a more severe penalty. So police officers, firefighters, EMTs, custodial officers, teachers, bus or cab drivers, jurors, members of the armed forces, and what have you. So all of these fall into that special class. So now let's quickly kind of move onto battery and really kind of talk about what it is. So we know what an assault is. I think we have it. And if you don't, let me give you a little bit more real quick, a little discussion about assault, so you're kind of really, you got it all together. Where the unlawful attempt to injure another has been made, the fact that the assailant failed in his attempt or was prevented or desisted from actually inflicting the injury he was attempting does not affect his guilt. The attempt to injure in many cases of assault is usually very evident, especially when actual injury results. In other cases, an attempt to injure may be inferred from the circumstances, where the assailant threatened to kill the victim and seized an axe and started towards her, and she fled and escaped. His act alone was held to be an assault. The attempt need not be apparent to the victim. The victim may be unconscious. In one particular case, gunpowder, which was attached to a burning fuse, was left near a person to be assaulted, although the person intended to be injured was not aware of that attempt. So the assailant need not have been in striking distance to inflict the blow he threatened. It is enough if he comes sufficiently near the person threatened to warrant the belief that the blow will be instantly struck unless the intended victim defends or flees. So since an assault is an attempt, the rules generally applicable to the law of attempts apply to both misdemeanor and felony assaults. To constitute an assault, there must be more than intention or preparation or words of threat. There must be an overt act from which the inference can be drawn that violent injury to the person of another was intended. And hopefully that didn't just kind of mess you up or kind of create, a little bit more gray area there. But that's kind of a little bit more discussion on assaults. Now, attempted assault. So let's figure this out real quick before we go to battery. There is no such offense as attempted assault in California. Okay, so I apologize. I received a phone call actually that was kind of important, and that's what happens when you have kids and you're doing an online class. But I think I was talking about the attempted assault and that there is no such offense as attempted assault in California because we've already figured out and we've already learned that in California, assault is an attempt itself. It's an attempted battery. So in California, you would not have an attempted assault, if that makes any sense. So now let's move on to battery. So Penal Code Section 242, the essential elements are stated here, but battery is rather simply defined as any willful and unlawful use of force or violence upon the person of another. Battery includes and implies an assault, for there can be no battery without an assault. But, keep in mind, there can be an assault without a battery. Battery is a completed assault, and the offense of simple assault is a necessarily included offense where battery is charged. Hopefully that little piece kind of cleans it up for you and you have a better understanding now between the two. Now, the elements of battery, there are three which constitute battery: any willful and unlawful use of force or violence on the person of another, punishable under Section 243A of the Penal Code, fine not exceeding $2,000 or imprisonment in county jail not exceeding 6 months or both. And again, if committed against special classes, the maximum jail term is 1 year. And battery, again, battery is a completed assault, and assault is a lesser and included offense of battery. And I think we did a pretty good job of kind of cleaning that up to make everybody understand. So those terms that you hear in there, willful and unlawful, simply means the act was not accidental. So people can't, that's part of, when you talk about the elements of battery: willful and unlawful, not accidental. Okay, general or constructive intent will suffice, as well gross negligence. The amount of force applied is immaterial. The force or violence need not cause pain, injury, or leave a mark. And interestingly enough, examples can include spitting, pouring liquid on somebody, or spraying water on someone, or throwing a drink in their face. So that would be an example of a battery. And I don't know if you ever kind of thought about that. You've seen on the movies where somebody throws a drink in somebody's face. So those are the elements of battery. So now let's start to kind of, I guess, raise the bar, if you will, and we're going to go up a little bit in the felony battery type sections, and we'll discuss that a little bit with these different kinds of examples. We could probably do that at the beginning here. So examples of battery to help differentiate between simple assault and battery. It's often been said that if one takes a swing at another and misses, he has committed an assault. If he connects with the other person's nose, it's battery. Other examples, again, kind of like what what I just said, are spitting on another, running into him with a bicycle, slapping someone in the face, but note, okay, that the amount of force used is not too important, except that causing very serious injury or using dangerous or deadly force can result in an increased punishment and a more serious charge. So felony battery is a felony under the following circumstances: committed against a special class of individuals listed in section 243C, when battery causes great bodily injury as listed in section 243D, or under the section here, sexual battery, that would be a felony as well. Now, when you talk about great bodily injury, that's section 243D. Battery with great bodily injury occurs when a physical injury requires professional medical treatment. Serious bodily injury is defined under section 243F4 as a loss of consciousness or a concussion, a bone fracture, a impairment of a bodily member, a wound requiring suturing or extensive suturing, or any type of serious disfigurement. Sexual battery, again, has its own separate section. We talked about that being a felony section as well, 243.4. The elements include touching an intimate part of another against their will while restrained by the accused or an accomplice, and we've learned all about accomplices, for the purpose of sexual arousal or gratification. And an intimate part of the body includes sexual organ, anus, groin, buttocks of any person, or the breast of a female. So these are the elements as it relates to sexual battery. And then lawful resistance to a crime. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when you throw in something like self-defense or whatever. So we're looking at Penal Code 692. Lawful resistance to the commission of a public offense may be made by the party about to be injured or by other parties. And where an attack is sudden and personal danger is imminent, a person may stand his or her ground and subdue his or her attacker, even though it be proven that he or she might have more easily gained safety by flight. So this is a little bone of contention with some states as well. This thing they call, actually there's a thing for it, they call it kind of a stand your ground law. And the thought is that you should defend yourself only long enough to where you can actually flee. But the law says here in this case, People versus Dawson, okay, that you can stand your ground and subdue your attacker, even though, okay, it might have been more easily gained safety by flight. And just kind of a side note here, because I get this quite a bit too. One could slay their attacker or use deadly force, if you will, only if threatened with life-threatening or serious bodily harm, not just danger. Okay, and they're gonna judge that on kind of what they call a level of reasonableness. So it kind of merits a little bit of extra discussion. So a person cannot set up their own standards of reasonableness or belief of injury or the amount of force necessary. That person, whoever it is limited to which the ordinary, reasonable, and prudent person placed in the same position would be warranted in doing, in considering reasonable and necessary under the same set of circumstances, if that makes any sense. So that reasonableness is going to come out when they talk about self-defense or using deadly force when subjected to what is perceived to be life-threatening or serious bodily harm, and again, not just danger, okay? And I get a lot of questions like that. Well, hey, somebody broke into my house and, you know, can I just shoot them in my living room? Well, you can't. Well, I guess you can, but unless you have those elements that we just kind of talked about, that those are prevalent, then you're going to have a hard time um, probably prevailing in that, where you end up maybe killing somebody and there was no um, perception of a life-threatening, you know, issue against you or serious bodily harm. There was just a feeling of danger. Okay, so let's kind of move on now to exhibiting a deadly weapon. Penal Code Section 417. Except in self-defense, every person who draws, which means pulls out, or exhibits any firearm, whether loaded or unloaded, or any other deadly weapon in a rude, angry, or threatening manner, or who unlawfully uses such a weapon in a fight or quarrel, is guilty of a misdemeanor. And note that Penal Code 417 covers the use of any deadly weapon, and in the case of firearms, the gun need not be loaded. Classified as a misdemeanor unless done in the presence of a police officer, then it is actually a felony. A couple of other sections that are listed in the book that we're not going to go through. We talked about the 417 section here, exhibiting in presence of a peace officer, exhibiting a firearm in a threatening manner. They have exhibiting a firearm replica, firearm drawn at a motor vehicle, pointing a laser, and several other sections that you can take the time to actually kind of go through and read. So assault with a deadly weapon. Now we're going to kind of ramp it up a little bit, and we're going to move into the felony areas here. Every person who commits an assault upon the person of another with a firearm or other deadly weapon or instrument, or by any means of force likely to produce great bodily injury, is guilty of a felony. And the penalty is more severe if the weapon is used, is a firearm. And the penalty is also more severe if the victim is a police officer or firefighter engaged in the performance of their duties. So what is a deadly weapon? Well, many non-traditional items would meet this legal requirement. Remember, a weapon does not have to be used, only force likely to produce great bodily injury. So what if somebody kicked somebody in the face with steel-toed boots so bad that they caused brain damage? Would that be enough for assault with a deadly weapon? Let's look. Assault on the person of another, yes. With a deadly weapon or instrument, what would the instrument be? The person's feet and the boot. With any force likely to produce great bodily injury? Yep. Or with a firearm? No, but you have the other three, and there you go. It would be, or could actually amount to, an assault with a deadly weapon. A couple other sections. Hazing. It is a misdemeanor to engage in initiation hazing at an educational institution. If death or serious bodily injury results, the crime is a felony. And a very super interesting section here, Health and Safety Code 120291 states, any person who exposes another to HIV during unprotected sex and you have to get this in here, so you have to know the elements, with the specific intent to infect, is in fact guilty of a felony. So a couple of cases that come out of that. There's a case law that goes with that if you want to research it, because it's kind of interesting. It's Roman, R-O-M-A-N, versus Superior Court, 113 Cal. 4th, 27. Or you could just Google Roman versus Superior Court, and you'll get all of that information as well. Assault with caustic chemicals, because we're kind of on the assault section here. Every person who willfully and maliciously places or throws or causes to be placed or thrown upon the person of another any corrosive acid, flammable substance, caustic chemical of any nature, with the intent to injure the flesh or disfigure the body of such person, is punishable by imprisonment in the state prison. Specific intent to either injure the flesh or disfigure the body must be proven as an independent factor. If such intent is absent or the act is done with another intent, it is not a violation of this section. However, the perpetrator may very well be guilty of some other assault crime. So again, that's why it's good to know all of these sections and kind of read deep down inside of them so you get the context of them. Okay, and it is classified as a felony. Poisoning, still around, section 347. The elements include willful mingling poison or harmful substance with any food. Mingle meaning put in, mix, put together with any food, drink, or medicine, or place a substance in any public water supply where the person knows or should have known subjects the others to injury, is in fact classified as a felony as well. And there are some other sections in here that talk about poisoning alcoholic beverages and things like that, and you can look at those as we kind of go through the chapter as well. Throwing objects or shooting at vehicles or dwellings. Here are just some sections that are listed on page 161 that talk about types of assaults in a sense: throwing substance at vehicles, shooting at an aircraft, interference with helicopters, and you can just kind of read down the list there. Dangerous discharge of a firearm, shooting at inhabited places or inhabited dwellings. So the last one here, dangerous discharge of a firearm, think about New Year's Eve when those people come out of their houses and they shoot up in the air and those bullets have to go somewhere and maybe somebody is actually injured or killed. So negligent or dangerous discharge of a firearm, section 246.3. Assault with the intent to commit certain felonies. So again, there are sections that delineate the fact that there is going to be an assault to commit another crime. So here, assault to commit felony: every person who assaults another with the intent to commit mayhem, rape, sodomy, oral copulation, or any violation of section 264.1, 288, or 289 is punishable by imprisonment in the state prison. And the elements talk about doing any direct or ineffectual act with specific intent to commit any of those sections. So there must exist in the mind of the assailant at the time of the attack the specific intent to commit one of the crimes specified, and this intent must be proven as one of the elements of the crime. And in your textbook, there's a separate little blurb on each one of those where you can get a little bit more information if you want. Administering stupefying drugs. So every person guilty of administering to another any chloroform, ether, or any controlled substance, anesthetic, intoxicating agent with the intent to thereby to enable or assist him or herself or any other person to commit a felony is guilty of a felony under section 222. And then my favorite, because it's been around for a million years and it's still here, train wrecking. Yes, there is a section, Penal Code 218, called train wrecking. And every person who unlawfully throws out a switch, removes from a rail, or places any obstruction or explosive material on or nearby any railroad with the intention, with the intent of derailing any passenger, freight, or other train, car, or engine is guilty of a felony. So kind of an interesting couple of sections that are there that again have been around for a while. Mayhem, well, what is that? Well, every person who unlawfully and maliciously deprives a human being of a member of his body, or disables, disfigures, or renders it useless, or cuts or disables the tongue, or puts out an eye, slits the nose, ear, lip, is guilty of mayhem, a felony under section 203. And there is a section also under 205, aggravated mayhem. And let me kind of give you that one because it goes right along with this one right here. So every person is guilty of aggravated mayhem when he or she unlawfully, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the physical or psychological well-being of another person, intentionally causes permanent disability or disfigurement of another human being, or deprives a human being of a limb, organ, or member or of his or her body. And for the purpose of this section, it's not necessary to prove an intent to kill. Okay. So as we read back, and we're going to kind of finish up here pretty quick. Um, we looked at some other areas where you could kind of abandon what it was, where abandonment of conspiracy or things like that. Well, we have here abandonment of an assault. So can you do that? Well, a defendant is guilty of the assault whether he voluntarily ceases his attack or whether he desisted because of the resistance of his intended victim or because of the approach of the other parties permitting his victim to escape. So when you talk about assaults, again, a defendant is guilty whether he voluntarily ceases his attack or whether he desisted because of the resistance of the intended victim, etc. So where there is no intent to commit a crime coupled with an overt act, the abandonment of the criminal purpose is no defense to a charge of attempt to commit those crimes either under People versus Carter. So justifications and excuses for assaults: if the use of force, even though it involves an intent to commit physical injury upon another, is lawful, such as self-defense, there is no assault. And finally, as we kind of wrap up here, domestic violence, section 273.5, corporal injury upon a spouse or cohabitant. The elements include willful infliction of corporal injury on a spouse or cohabitant resulting in a traumatic condition. A cohabitant is defined by the case People versus Holyfield and includes some permanency of a relationship. And traumatic condition is defined by both 273.5c and People versus Abrego and means a condition of the body such as a wound or external or internal injury, whether of a minor or serious nature caused by physical force. Now, section 18.250 says that police officers must take custody of a firearm seen in plain view or found during a lawful search in a domestic violence situation. Section 679.05 says a victim must be advised orally or in writing of the right of a domestic violence advocate and a support person of the victim's choosing during the interview by law enforcement or attorneys. And 273.6 says any intentional and knowing violation of a domestic violence protective order is in fact a misdemeanor. And then we'll finish up here talking about child abuse and those that are mandated reporters. So section 11166 says that healthcare practitioners, educators, police officers, and other designated persons, and there is a laundry list of a few, are required by law to make a report if they know or reasonably suspect that a child is a victim of physical or sexual abuse or neglect, and failure to make such a report because you are a mandated reporter is in fact a misdemeanor. A couple other sections that fall underneath the domestic violence section that I will let you take some time to leave or to read here that are listed under domestic violence. And then finally, for many years, the state of California has had a statute addressed to the aid of the victims of violent crime. However, less than 1% of the victims have availed themselves of financial relief through the statute. For this reason, the state legislature enacted Government Code Section 13959 and 13968, subsection C. Okay, so I know that was quick, but that's okay. I think we did a really good job of covering assaults and the types of assaults. And of course, again, if you have any questions, please post them on the discussion board. Make sure you read through your terminology quiz, and also do me a favor, read the chapter, okay, and try to fill in some of the holes and look at some of the smaller section or any of the discussion points that are listed in the chapter as well. So that will be it for chapter 10, and until next time.